Hello and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. Our weekly webinars are aimed to provide advice and share knowledge amongst business owners, and this is part of our service to our Smart Room members. If you're not already a member or a BizSmart client and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please visit our website biz-smart.co.uk and go to the Smart Room page. Our host joining me today is Select member Sara Marrett from the HR department. But before we start the webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions that you may have for Sara, and she will do her best to answer them all at the end of the session. Thank you, Sara. Over to you.
Thanks, Caroline. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm here today to do a webinar around reviewing the performance of your employees. I'm aiming to cover aspects such as what is a performance review, when should they be done, why do them, and most importantly, how do you go about doing them? So first of all, I'd just like to touch base on what actually is a performance appraisal. Basically, it's a summary of a person's work and performance that they've done over a given period of time, normally either over a 6-month period or over 12 months. And generally they're used to set aims and objectives for the coming period. I thought I'd just share with you a recent study that was done by the Office Angels, where they've discovered that 25% of employees start actually looking for a new job within 2 weeks of a bad appraisal being delivered. And 40% of employees begin searching for a new job within a month of a bad appraisal. So getting it right or getting it wrong is absolutely key. What's the difference then between an appraisal and someone's performance or reviewing their performance? One key thing to note is that an appraisal shouldn't be the time to discuss or address performance issues with employees, particularly if they've happened months earlier. I tend to find that employees are a bit like puppies. Unless you tell them off there and then, they won't necessarily remember the bad behaviour or bad performance that they did from previous times. You must deal with performance issues immediately as they arise. That way they can be curtailed, and it may be a case that the employee isn't actually aware that they're underperforming or doing something wrong. So always raise it with them at the time. Here's some real quotes that I thought I'd share with you from appraisals that I've either been a part of or I've heard of as they've raised issues after the time. One statement was, works well under constant supervision and cornered like a rat in a trap. A little bit of a controlling manager there, I think. Another phrase used was, he would be out of his depth in a puddle. Very condescending. Another one was, she sets low personal standards and then consistently fails to achieve them. And the final one, this employee should go far and the sooner he starts the better. That's really an example of where I guess performance isn't being managed at the time, and they'd rather a person walked out of a job than manage them themselves. So we'll move on now to how an appraisal should be done. The key thing really is to plan in advance for it. Make sure you've got all the relevant paperwork to hand, and I'll cover that a little bit later on. Make sure as a manager you clear your diary as well so that you're not being interrupted. Each party should know the purpose of the meeting. Employees can be quite fearful of appraisals if they don't know what to expect, so make sure they know what it's going to be about. Make sure you prepare in advance. That comes back to the paperwork again. Do it in a private, uninterrupted area. You don't want people passing through, knocking on the door, phone calls going off, etc. Just make sure you set time aside in your diary for probably a good hour at least to undertake a good appraisal so that you won't be interrupted. And you basically go through the summary of performance in the given period that you're reviewing, so either the last 6 months or the last 12 months. Not in great detail, but like I say, a summary of the key things. You review any existing goals and targets that were perhaps set at the last review or performance. And you also go about setting the goals and any targets with the individual for the future. The key thing is it needs to be a two-way conversation. It's not just you as a manager relaying to the individual your views and thoughts of their performance. You need to gain their view of it as well so that they can reflect on what they think they've been good at or otherwise. A question that comes up frequently is, should a performance review or appraisal be linked to monetary awards, so the annual pay rewards? There's very much mixed reviews on this, to be honest, and at the end of the day it's the company decision whether you want to link these or not. I'm going to go through just some of the pitfalls and positives of doing such a thing. So some of the pitfalls can be that if you link it to the monetary reward, you'll only find that employees do enough to get their increase that they've sort of been promised, and perhaps won't go above and beyond than that. You need to make sure that any objectives that you set are carefully designed to ensure they're achievable and that they'll last for the period that the appraisal is for. Linking appraisals to rewards can be emotive or actually a demotivator for some employees. And you also have to ensure that you've got the budget to deliver on them if they do succeed in them all. Some of the positive aspects, however, can be that employees see results of their hard work. It's quite instant. They can have a share in the company's success. They become more involved and engaged in their work. And money can be a motivator, albeit for the short term. But what you also need to consider is that it's not a motivator for all individuals, and you need to make sure you understand your employees and what motivates them individually for each one. So in terms of sort of the beginning and the end of the meeting, you should always have an opening statement which sort of encourages the employees to participate, so that two-way conversation happening. Try and relax them. It's likely that they'll be nervous. You as managers may well be nervous as well, particularly if there's some perhaps more of the constructive feedback that you've got to give. Explain the format of the meeting to them so they know what to expect. Outline the objectives of the meeting and set a reasonable time frame around it as well. In terms of closing out the meeting, you should explain what sort of happened next in terms of how the appraisal will be used in the future. I think one of the main drawbacks sometimes can be that it's seen as a sort of form-filling exercise that then gets filed away for the next 12 months. You should keep the appraisal as an active document between the two of you and review it over sort of either a quarterly basis or even a monthly basis if you're doing 6 months reviews. Set an informal review date, as I said, either quarterly or monthly going forwards. Assess the interview between you, ask them how they felt it went and how they're feeling afterwards. Encourage them and motivate them to leave there so that they can go out and start working on their objectives, and summarise between you any outcomes that have been agreed. So what about the appraisees in all of this? What might they be nervous of and how can you overcome this as a manager? As everything in human nature, it's the fear of the unknown, which is why that opening statement is really important. Some of them may see it as an annual telling off, and therefore they go in there feeling almost quite defensive previously. They may have had a bad experience in other organisations and will be quite anxious that way. Some people may have an inability to accept criticism and so have a defensive stature before they even come into the meeting. So again, that sort of preparation, getting the paperwork to them, making them aware of what it's about is really important. They might fear that it's going to be quite a formal meeting when it doesn't need to be. It can be quite relaxed. They won't know the purpose of the meeting and they might come in thinking they're not able to express their views. They're just going to be talked at for the purpose of the meeting. So how can you overcome that? Talk to them generally about things before you start the meeting. If you're holding it after a weekend, just ask them how their weekend went and what they did, just to relax them really. There should be a self-appraisal form that you can ask them to complete prior to the meeting, and I can arrange for any of these paperworks to be issued afterwards. This should be completed in advance before the meeting by the employee so that they've had time to think about their own performance, what they want to get out of the meeting, etc. Structure the meeting so they'll have the opportunity to have their say. Make sure the objectives and things discussed are in line with their job. Let them know that it's a two-way process and they can ask questions at any time. And try to make sure, I guess, coming back to the bit about unaddressed performance issues from a few months ago, there shouldn't be any surprises for people within their appraisal meeting. So moving on then to the goals and the objectives and setting them. Business objectives are basically a way for organisations to define their goals and direction that they want to go in for the next 12 months. So you may want to ask yourselves a couple of questions before you go into the reviews. What do you want your business to achieve over the next 6 to 12 months? What are your own business goals? And then how can your employees help you to do this? Using their key skills and attributes, how can they help you to achieve your goals and your objectives? I'm sure some of you, majority of you, will have come across SMART objectives before. Any objectives and targets that you set should be considered as SMART ones. So what does that mean? Objectives should be specific and detail exactly what needs to be done by the employee. They should be measurable. So achievement or progress towards these goals can be measured not just by yourself as a manager, but by the employee as they go along as well. Achievable. So make sure they're accepted by those responsible for achieving them. Realistic. They must be possible to attain. This is really important to keep the employees motivated. If they feel they've been set an objective that they're never going to be able to achieve, they'll be demotivated from the start. And they need to be timely. So the time period for achieving them should be clearly stated and agreed by both parties. The part that people dread most about appraisals and performance reviews is giving feedback. People don't like to be seen as the bad person, but done in the right way, it can be very positive. Feedback should be used to encourage employees to develop, raise their morale and motivation within their workplace, improve their performance. But again, it shouldn't be just done as a one-off in an annual review. It should be given informally on a regular basis. As individuals, we like to be told how we're doing and to have that feedback. I always encourage regular one-to-one meetings for managers to have with their employees, ideally on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. Again, that way you avoid any surprises at these more formal reviews. Constructive feedback is the absolute key. You should give it feedback immediately. You should be very specific of what you're feeding back on, so there isn't any confusion from the employee as to the point you're trying to make. Always try and give examples where you can when you're giving feedback, and seek a response for them. This isn't just about you delivering to them your views and thoughts. Start the meeting. You've got their self-appraisal form there. Go through with what they've put and why they think the things they do about their performance. Help them and suggest ways they can improve. But what you should always do is leave the choice to them as to whether they want to change their behaviour. You can't force behavioural changes. You can make suggestions as to improvements around things, but if it is an actual behavioural change, they'll need to accept that themselves before being able to undertake it. Always make sure it's done in an adult way, not condescending or patronising in any way, because that will just cause conflict within the meeting. and always include targets for any improvement. Again, make it measurable so both you as a manager and the individual can see that they're making good progress to where you want them to be. Paperwork is key with appraisals, because if you're doing annual ones, it's hard to sort of recall all of the discussions that's taken place. I can provide appraisal guidance notes, both for the manager and for the individuals concerned, so they know exactly what to expect. I've mentioned about self-appraisal forms. Always give these in advance, and preferably about a week before the meeting, I would suggest, so that they have real time to reflect and give some thoughts to what they want to discuss and how they think they've performed. You should also complete your manager's appraisal form in advance, or at least make some notes of things that you want to cover with the individual. If you've got job descriptions for your employees, I'd always recommend taking those into the review meeting as well. So if there's any changes that need to happen, or perhaps their role has shifted over the previous 12 months, then is a good time to sit down with them and agree their new tasks going forward. Always agree an action plan and a personal development plan to go forward, so they know exactly what they're working on. But as I said before, just don't use the meeting as a form filling exercise, and I try not to sit there filling the form in with them as you go along. Make it face-to-face meeting, eye contact throughout. Just do rough notes if you need to, and then complete the forms afterwards. That way they feel they've got your whole attention throughout the meeting. And again, don't just file the appraisal form away at the end of it for it to sit in the filing cabinet for 12 months. Bring it out on a regular basis. Business objectives change throughout the year, as many of you will know, and so your employees' objectives should perhaps change to reflect that as well. So make sure that they're kept up to date. And that really completes my webinar, other than any questions if people have got any.
Okay, thank you very much. Your first question, we've had one from Laura, and she asks, how do I ensure the performance review meeting is not a one-way conversation?
Okay, thanks Laura. It's about that preparation, I think, making sure the employee knows the format and structure that the meeting's going to take. So you say to them before the meeting that they'll be expected to participate, and I think that's where their self-appraisal form comes into it as well, because they'll have had their thoughts, and you can ask them perhaps to talk through that themselves rather than you reading it out during the meeting.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Simon. What if an employee doesn't agree with what I say about their performance?
Yeah, there is a danger at times that it can come into more of a battle of wills, I suppose, these reviews. But what I would say is if you've got a particular issue with an employee about how they've underperformed, then give that example. Say, you know, when you were working on X project, or when you were dealing with Y customer, you dealt with it this way, and perhaps we'd have liked to see you do it this way. So I think if you can give realistic examples of their work, then it's quite hard for them then to disagree.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Matthew. Are you able to give an example of SMART objectives?
Oh, that's putting me on the spot. Yes, I'm sure I can. Let's have a think about this. Okay, you could have an objective, perhaps somebody that's in a call centre maybe, that says they need to convert a certain percentage, so let's say 33% of any leads that they obtain to customers within, and again you're given a set time scale, say 30 days of making an initial contact with them. As opposed to, I guess if it wasn't a SMART objective, it would be something like they'd need to convert some leads every day to make sure their customer base grows. So it's very targeted, it's very specific in terms of what they need to do.
Okay, great, thank you. Another question from Gillian. Would you recommend recording an appraisal meeting rather than taking notes?
Thanks for that question, Gillian. I'm asked this question a lot, and not just about appraisal meetings, but also disciplinary meetings and perhaps grievance hearings. It can always cause a bit of a sense of fear if somebody's sat there with some form of tape recorder within a meeting, and I think it'd be quite off-putting for individuals. So I certainly wouldn't advise it or recommend it. Always try and do some rough notes. If you tell your employee at the start, I'm just going to be taking some rough notes so that I can get this typed up afterwards, they'll then be expecting you to write notes, etc. So that should be deemed okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Sara, for hosting today's webinar. I will be sending out a copy of the presentation and Sara's contact details to you all very shortly, so please do email her if you have any further questions. But before we close, just a quick reminder, this webinar is part of our service to our Smart Room members. If you're not already a member or a BizSmart client and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please visit our website, biz-smart.co.uk, and go to the Smart Room page. That's the end of today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope you can join us again very soon.